Hello everyone. Welcome to Indian Contract Act lecture number 8, lecture number 9. I'm so sorry. In the last lecture we had dealt with section 23 and 24, in which we had basically talked about when the object and consideration uh, are forbidden by the law, for law defeats the purpose of the law, or is against the public policy. Under those conditionalities, the whole agreement turns to be void. That was the last discussion we had. Now let's move on to the next provision of Indian Contract Act. The next provision is about section 25. Let's move on to now section 25. In the till last lecture we had covered till section 24. If before watching this video, I would suggest you to watch previous series of the lectures, whole the playlist I've created. Watch all the lectures to have a more comprehensive understanding. And if you know the course concepts, you can proceed with this. But this is a different concept. This is about agreement without consideration. Till now, I have explained you that for formation of a valid contract, for the validity of a contract, I've explained you multiple times that in case there is any kind of agreement, there is need of a consideration to make it a valid contract. And I've told you multiple times that if there is no valid consideration, when the consideration is not valid, I have discussed in a last lecture in detail, so I'm presuming you already know about all of that. So let's move on to our topic. The topic is section 25. Section 25 is about agreement without consideration. In case there is an agreement without consideration, what would happen to that? General rule, section 25 Indian contract, an agreement without consideration is void. The general rule says that always understand that in the law there are some general rules and then there are certain exceptions as well. If the certain conditionalities are getting fulfilled, the law is not, I would not say law is based upon certain exceptions, specifications, certain examples, certain important conditionalities. If you're including in that, so the broadly the topics can change. So there is one such exception in which even if there is no consideration in an agreement, still it will be valid. Consideration, I hope you already know that when there are two people, like if A and B, they are exchanging something. A is giving his house to B in exchange is giving some probably 50 lakh rupees. So this is a 50 lakh is a consideration amount. I hope you already know. But if in case there is a transaction, like there is a property transaction is happening, property transaction, but there is no consideration. In more detail, you will understand about this topic in your property law classes. I've already told you that contract law is a general law. There are a lot of laws like property law, securities law. If you're specifically dealing with any sort of arrangements, I've multiple times used the word arrangement. There is always some commercial arrangements. I like that. In the property transaction, there are certain arrangements. So, one such arrangement, to give an example, under what circumstances, even if there is no consideration, still it can formulate into a valid contract. When there is a transaction due to the natural love and affection, this is the first condition in which the agreement, an agreement which is done because of the natural love and affection, and there is no consideration involved. I'll give you an example how it happens. A father registers a written agreement to give property to his son out of love, valid even without consideration. Let's take it. um See, there is a father and there is a son. Father has a property, and the father wants that property to be transferred to the name of his son. Transfer of property to son. In the property law classes, you'll understand in more detail, because here, because the father is transferring the property to the son, the relationship between the party, what is a relationship? Relationship is guided by love and affection. always write this word in your exam if it comes in your subjective questions, that there is a love and affection component in this whole transaction. So even if there is no consideration, consideration is not involved, because why will a son give the money or like something in exchange to a father? Because son is like a heir. You'll understand your Hindu law, or like property transactions, or like inheritance. Like son has received something from the father. So in your property law classes, when you will talking about the concept of gift is a kind of transaction in which there is love and affection between the parties and no consideration involved. If these two parties can show in their transaction that there was a love and affection component between them and there was no consideration involved, so in such kind of transactions, there can be some transfer without the consideration as well. But there's certain conditionalities. The conditionalities should be that agreement, the kind of agreement these two parties are entering into, it must be in writing. These parties have to, whatever agreement they have done, because I've already told you in the multiple classes that whenever there any kind of agreement is done, even oral promises can become contracts, as I told you earlier in the earlier classes as well. But if for such kind of transaction there is a need for this to be done in writing, it must be registered under the relevant laws. The relevant laws I'm not explaining to you, because when you will be doing your property law classes, there you will deal with Transfer of Property Act. There you will understand in more detail as to how this transaction has to work. But it should be registered means it has to be written and properly registered. Whenever there is a registration of certain kind of contract, there is some registration fees transferred. Sometimes there is a stamp duty and all based upon the relevant provision. Just to give you clarity about that, if there is any such kind of transaction, there is a requirement of fulfilling these conditionalities. Only then, if you're fulfilling all these things, this is must. You must fulfill that. Made on account of natural love and affection between the parties in close near relationship, parent, child, husband. Whenever if such kind of transaction is challenged, what the court will see that such kind of transaction can only between the parties where there is love and affection, like parent, child, husband, wife, sibling kind of arrangement. So I think now you are able to understand why such kind of transactions are allowed in the Indian Contract Act. Because Indian Contract, to understand that the consideration is not possible in every kind of transaction. Why this is not possible? Because such kind of there are certain kind of relationship in which do not follow the commercial rules, like which is fall with the third party. Okay. So let's move on to our next part about the let's move on to our next part is about the past voluntary services. Past voluntary services is under section 25, clause 2. Past voluntary services, what is past voluntary services? Now let's understand. Um, if a person, like there is A and there is B, A find B's lost purse. A has found the B's lost purse and returns to B. When A has found some purse, B's purse, and he comes to B. A comes to B and tells to B that I found your purse, and B promises to A that I'll to promises A B promises to A that I'll pay you 500 rupees for your service. This later promise is enforceable even though no consideration was given at time of original act. So, what was the original act? A had given purse to B, so it had involved no consideration. So, this act in itself had no consideration. A had basically done this act out of like voluntary service, that he found the purse. But what the B said to A in exchange of act which is done by A, that I will pay you 500 rupees. This 500 rupees. But this promise now becomes enforceable, even though then in the original act there was no consideration involved. This is basically the concept about a promise to compensate for acts already done voluntarily for the promise or for something the promiser was legally compelled to do. So if you see this kind of thing in this thing, so if you see in this thing, for the act, like in this commercial arrangement, B is now paying to A for the act A had already done. So in this, if you see, only B is paying to A. If you see, in this kind of contracts, the exchange of something or something is not happening. Even though this is a bit confusing, but you can understand that the past voluntary service had already happened, but now B is paying to A because A B had promised, so it become legally enforceable. Not a very important concept to go into depth. This one was important. You should know. Take a careful look at it. The second part is also important. In the second part, what we are discussing is about promise to pay uh, time barred debts. In this part, what we are doing? In this part, what we are doing is promise to pay time barred debts. So let me give you an example. This is also not a proper contract specific example. This is about a limitation act. You will deal with limitation act when you will do with your civil procedure code. But to give an example as to how limitation work, limitation is like A and B. See, if A had to pay B 10,000 rupees, example, but what happened was to B. Okay. So there is under Limitation Act, there is a times Limitation Act provides a timelines that only till this duration you can file a claim against A. What happened is now 10,000 has not been paid. This 10,000 is a debt which A, what we call is AOB 10,000 rupees. But limitation, according to limitation act, you can only file for the claim till this much period of time. Let's say for 3 years. 3 years B did not ask for the money from A. Now what happened is this 10,000 had turned into bad debt. Bad debt means which has not been paid. 10,000 has not been paid by A. The concept states that promise to pay time bar debts. See, now if B wants to get money back from A, as I told you, if B now like after 3 years, what happened is after 3 years, B wants to file case against A. A time against A. But now 3 years have lapsed. I already told you that under Limitation Act, there certain time limits are specified. You can file it for the claim only till this period of time. But what happened is like B has not filed the case. Now B wants to file the suit. Now B wants to file a about limitation and civil procedure. When you will be dealing with the civil procedure, deal with that, because in a contract act you don't need to go into specifications, because contract is a very initial level. Because now probably if you're in the first semester you're dealing with it, or if you're CS student, in the company secretary course also there is some components. Among the CA course also there is contract act. You don't need to go into that much detail about the limitation act. Whatever definitions are provided, as I told you, the crisp notes I have given, you can refer to these specific things and refer back to your books. These videos are important for the conceptual clarity. Don't go into that much details. You can give it in the form of examples. Even if you write the limitation act, it will be important. The limitation act you need to write because it is in the definition, but don't go into what is the time period and all that you will be dealing if a law student in your next subsequent years when you will be doing with the civil procedure. Now let's move on to our part about the time debt period, time bar. So now B can't file the case, as I told you. B can't file case. Now B, as I told you, B is not able to file the case. Now this debt will be called as time barred debt. What is time bar debt? Time bar debt is because of this limitation period is now applied. B cannot sue A in the court of law. But what happened in the story is, you probably will be amazed, but there is all sometimes what happens is A and B. Sometimes A tells to B that I will pay back. A tells to B, probably like B, A is a very good debtor, and now A is like, oh, I want to pay even the time bar debt. A is like, I want to pay the time bar debt. So what the law prescribes, law states that a promise must be, if the now A wants to pay. Now in this case, A wants to pay back to B. A wants to pay back to B. But what the law states that for such kind of contracts, it must be in writing, signed by the debtor. Debtor, who in this case is debtor. Debtor is a person who owes money. Who owes money. Here, who is a debtor? A is a debtor. A is a debtor. A or his agent has to sign a document. It must be in writing. It must be signed by debtor or his authorized agent for payment, whole or in part of the debt. Sometimes what happen is that they want to continue. Sometimes what usually happen is, I'll tell you in what scenarios it usually happen. In such kind of scenarios are usually during insolvency. During insolvency, if you see, A has turned insolvent. A has turned insolvent and not able to pay to B. But whenever the proceedings of insolvency, like liquidation proceedings, about this whole, I'm stating, you will understand your bankruptcy classes, insolvency, bankruptcy, or any sort of debt recovery tribunals when you will be studying. But to give just analysis as to why this will happen, because a lot of students ask me reasoning. I always believe that laws should be studied context wise, examples wise, as to why this will happen in a more practical way. This will happen during a liquidation, probably. If you see, A now has turned insolvent. Probably, like I told you, A owes 10,000 rupees. But during liquidation, what they decide is that because now A does not have money, insolvency is a kind of situation when A does not have the money and his company or his business has turned insolvent, company has turned insolvent, that kind of things has happened. And now A has turned insolvent, and then even after limitation period, they have decided like, we'll pay you 5,000 rupees. Like in the part, they will pay to B. They have not yet paid, but they will pay. There is a kind of, then they have to make a agreement. There is a agreement. Then it has to, they may have to make a contract to make it legally binding. Otherwise, A next time, next day, tomorrow will say, no, I can't pay you, to make it legally binding. So for this kind of thing, what happen is, for part payment or for full payment, it need to be in writing so that it can be enforceable in the court of law. So one thing which is important to understand is, here, if you see in this kind of arrangement, why we are saying that it is without consideration. Why we have said that this is without consideration? This, I've said it without consideration because if you see, in this case, legally, because of limitation period applied. So now time, because of time, B cannot sue A. So it is not legally enforceable. Now this debt cannot be legally enforceable. So but in legal sense, what we'll say, even though there is a claim of B against A, but legally, if you see, there is no claim because limitation period has started, so there is no claim still. So in this transaction, A and B, A is like now saying, I'll pay you 5,000 rupees. They're entering into legal agreement. They are now agreeing into a transaction in which 5,000 will be paid by B. But in the legal sense, if you say, B is not giving anything in return because B's claim has expired because of limitation period. So if you see, in legal sense, if you see in this transaction, only A is giving money as consideration, but in exchange it is getting rid of its time barred debts. But if you see, legally speaking, so what is happening, if you see, I now explain in Hindi because a lot of people probably won't be able to understand. क्योंकि इस जो पूरी ट्रांजेक्शन हुई है उसमें सिर्फ A ही 5,000 रुपीज B को दे रहा है एंड B इन एक्सचेंज कुछ भी नहीं दे रहा है बिकॉज उसका 5,000 जो उसको अभी, क्योंकि B के पास कोई क्लेम ही नहीं बचा, वो जो 10,000 रुपए थे वो ले ही नहीं सकता है B बिकॉज वाई इट कांट टेक 10,000 रुपीज, क्योंकि उसका पहले से वो एक्सपायर हो गया है एंड अभी ए को कोई लाइबिलिटी नहीं रही है. तो इसीलिए ऐसी तरह के ट्रांजेक्शन्स को इंडियन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एक्ट ने अंडर सेक्शन 25 के एक्सेप्शंस में डाला है. वाई दे हैव पुट इट इन एक्सेप्शन? दे हैव पुट इट इन दिस एक्सेप्शन because of that, because there is no consideration in this whole transaction. So this agreement is without consideration. is without consideration. I think I have used all my energies to explain in the best possible manner I could explain. If you're not able to understand, rewind the video, or you can what you can do is comment to me if you're not able to understand it properly. Read back to your book. I think it's fine. You must be able to understand. I've explained in the easiest language I could. Okay, so let's move on to this. Completes a section 25, a very important section for any exam, I would say. Let's move on to now our part about restraint of marriages. I will be briefly dealing with this. 25 was very important. That's why, because I've already dealt with this earlier as well. And a very easy section to understand is, um, easy section is about the restraint of marriage. Restraint of marriage. Why this restraint of marriage? What are the core principles? What are the rules which are applied? What is that? Any kind of agreement cannot be made for the restraint of marriage. What is that? That two person A and B cannot make an agreement that A will not marry C, or they cannot make an agreement as to that they will not marry forever, they will never marry in their life. Why? Because the such kind of agreement will be against the public policy. Like, if you see, marriage is considered to be a right. It's kind of a, not a right, I would say, it's kind of a freedom to marry is like a fundamental, which is very important for the whole humanity itself. So any agreement that restrain marriages of any person except a minor. There can be agreement for the minor, because minors till 18. So under, if you see legally age, a female has to be of the 18 years age, and a male has to be 21 years of age to marry. Public policy reasoning: freedom to marry is fundamental. Contract limiting this are disallowed by law. This is section 26. What are the scope of section 26? Absolute or partial restraint. Both total and partial restraints are void. Absolute, any kind of total restraint or any kind of partial restraint is like, if you understand, total is like you will never marry forever, or there can be a conditionality that you will not marry till the age of 50, 35 years. Such kind of agreements are void in their nature. They will be nullity because it applies to all adults, covers all person except minors. So there can be some agreement which restrain a minor's marriage. These can be still be considered void, can still be considered valid, but for the adults, for the major, such kind of agreements are totally prohibited. See, Louis versus Pierce, these are certain Rao Rani, Gulab Rani. These cases you can write in your exams. Not very important this topic is, but for the MCQ part or for certain kind of other topics, you just need to know that there is an agreement never to marry anyone except X is void, except if X is a minor. Clause penalizes widow with loss of right if she marries is not restrained on marriage. Such kind of is important. Like, there's sometimes what happens is, during agreements they make an agreement that the clause penalizing widow with loss of rights, if there's sometimes certain property transaction that if a widow is given, if widow remarries, she will lose all her property. It is okay. So penalizing widow with loss of right if she remarries is not restrained on marriage. If you see this kind of agreement, during that kind of agreement, this is still allowed. This is a very landmark case of Rao Rani versus Gulab Rani. If you see in this case, what happened was, this restraint was put that if one of these one of the wife, there were two wives of a person who died, and there was an agreement that if you remarry, then this property, you will lose a right over this property. This is not a restraint to marriage, because now that person is not restrained from marrying. That person, this whole agreement is that if you remarry, then only you will lose the rights. So this is not absolute restraint on the marriage. You will only lose the rights if you will marry. So this will not be under the restraint to marriage. You can read on this case, important case. A lot of time this is asked in case studies as well. A good case, you should go for this. This is also a conditionality. The conditional widow will loses maintenance upon marriage. That remarriage, the certain kind of there are certain agreements which state that if a widow will remarry, then then widow will lose the right to maintenance. Such kind of agreements are also held valid because they are not restraining the marriage. You will only not get the maintenance. So it's important to understand the contracts in its essence to understand it in a better way. Now I think it's easy now. Working on the section 27, 27 is about the restraint in agreement in restraint of trade. Moving to this agreement, this is also a very easy topic, as to whenever there is an agreement which is restraining a trade, which restrains the trade, that mm, that this trade cannot happen between the parties. Such kind of agreements are also held void. Why they are held void? Because trade is considered to be part of Article 19. Article 19 is like Article 19 itself states freedom of trade. Freedom of trade is one of the important constituents, one of the important fundamental right which is granted to every citizen. Every agreement which by which anyone is restrained from exercising lawful profession, whatever lawful profession a person enters into, or into trade, business, or of any kind, is to that extent void. We understand why this kind of provision is there in contract act, because if you will bar someone from exercising that kind of profession, these kind of agreements will be against the welfare of the state itself, welfare of the citizens, and also like public policy. uh, so this whole provision protects the freedom to pursue any lawful occupation or business. One thing which you need to understand about the lawful profession, what it states, lawful profession means that there are certain professions, like if you see the professions of lawyers, you cannot, even if you have a advocate, you have a degree, okay, you have a law degree. Almost I think all the law students know, if you have a degree but you cannot become an advocate till you pass the bar exam. You can't be like, I am a lawyer, I've done the law school, now I'm going to become an advocate. You need to give the bar exam. You need to pass the BCI's bar exam in order to be enrolled for the in order to be enrolled as an advocate and appear before the court of law. So a lawful profession is like there are certain restraints can be put. This would not be considered to be a restraint. This is merely a mechanism to make it lawful. If you can't you the lawyers can only become advocates if you pass that exam, if you enroll yourself. So this is lawful exercise of the profession. Such conditionalities would not be. If you see there are other profession like CS professions, if you see CA profession, doctors have they have to get a license certificate. This is a lawful occupation of the business. I think it's easy to understand. Another is applies to all contract, including employment, partnership, commercial agreements. Why it states about employment, partnership, commercial agreements? This topic I'll deal with during. I'll explain you about the sale of goodwill, and I'll give you good examples of this topic. Agreements restraining illegal businesses. If you see certain kind of policies, statute, laws are always there. Like you can't sell the drugs, you can't do gambling houses, you can't run the coach of prostitution. If you see, there's certain restraints are there, and under certain statute laws which prescribe that the certain kind of business, certain kind of trade is regulated. Sometimes it is regulated by the law, and you the ones who are running that thing, they need to get the approval, the required approval from the regulators. See, like company, if someone is running a company, they need to there is a we have the Companies Act, in which we have various like we have Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they issue a lot of guidelines every day. We have registrar of companies, the registrar, they give they always have they give certain guidelines, they have some compliances. You need to follow all of these properly if you want to run a valid company. So these all requirements companies need to fulfill. And there's certain trade, if you see gambling business or something like that, and it's explicitly held by law to be against the law and specifically provided in a certain statute and laws. Such kind of business and trade is always prohibited. Moving on to the part which I'm discussing about the sale of goodwill. Sale of goodwill, I was talking about the fact if a person sells goodwill of a business, they may agree not to carry on a similar business with a reasonable local limit as long as the buyer successor continues the business. So if you see, as I told you about employment partnership commercial agreements, this provision of restraint of marriage also restraint of trade also applies to that. um Okay, so I'll give you an example properly to explain it in a more better way as to how it happens. If you see example, I'll give you example is about A and B. A and B. A has a business. A has a business of probably if you see business of sweets. A sells sweets and B A has a sells sweets like if you see you can give any name like I just give it like my local shop is Sohan Sweets, so I get sweets from them. So it's like A's name is Sohan and he has a Sohan Sweets. And this A and B are like the citizen of, they stay in some village. If you see there is a village, okay, they stay in a village, and this Sohan Sweets is very famous. Everyone loves the sweets of Sohan Sweets. And B is new into this market. A wants to sell this Sohan Sweets for any reason. Like A is not able to run is the business. A health is bad, or A something happened to A. Okay, A wants to sell this business. B comes to A, and B tells to A that I can buy your business. So they make an agreement. They make an agreement that okay, B will now run the name the this business. What the A is giving the A is selling the A basically sale of goodwill is happening. A is selling the goodwill. A is selling the goodwill because B will run the business in the name of Sohan Sweets. So the brand remains intact, because what happens is we do not buy it because of a owner. Whenever it becomes a brand, what we call it a brand. We call a brand when it becomes famous, everyone knows, everyone wants to buy that thing because A tells to B. So in their agreement, what they do, A tells all the trade secrets that oh, I make this kind of ingredients, I add in this wheat to make it more good, delicious and all. B is like okay, I'm paying you this money. So B pays the money for all of this thing, and in their agreement what the B tells to A that you cannot run the this whole business whatever this business forever in your life. Such kind of agreement is void. Why? Because it is restraining A from doing this business forever. But in their agreement, they can include reasonable time. If they would have included reasonable time that only in the 5 years or like 10 years, you cannot do this business in this locality. The restriction as to timing and place should be reasonable, that in this locality or in this area it cannot be that A cannot do this business forever in his life. He cannot sell the sweets forever in their life. Even in the commercial agreements, if you see usually a lot of companies this kind of probably in the employment law you will discuss with in the employment contract. What happens is like if A is a company, okay, and B is an employee. If B is like B resigns from A, sometimes they have an agreement that B cannot work in any kind of competitive company in which A is doing business. Like if A is IT company, they have an agreement that B cannot work in the IT company which is A's competitor. Like in this particular area, like if they're working in Bangalore, if they're working in Bangalore, A tells to B that you cannot work in the IT company in the Bangalore region for this much period of time. Or like there will be listed companies that okay, this company you cannot work in for this period of time. This particular period, it cannot be that forever you cannot work. So the clauses are reasonable restrictions. Reasonable restrictions are permissible. These reasonable restrictions should be about place, timing, means scope should be defined, it should not be broad. So in case that's a very broad, the court will nullify kind of thing. I think you are able to understand about employment thing, partnership also I've dealt with, like if there are partners, one partner is like going away from the business, why they make such kind of clauses? Because what happens is that there is always a chances that the one who is going away, that in this case, like if A and B are partners, they had established a good business, and now if B is going away, because B is going away, B can set up, B can take away all the hidden secrets and everything and give it to some other firm and join them. So this will be kind of thing will be against the public policy. I think I was able to make things clear to you in a very detailed manner. I've covered everything. If you want a case laws on this particular topic, you can refer to these cases of Madhup Chandra versus Rajkumar, ISO Petroleum Company Limited versus Harper. In all these, if you see whatever I've discussed, more or less the kind of concept I have given to you, they are dealing with the same things. You can read on these cases, you can write in these cases and revise these cases. You can refer for your examination if you are going a subjective paper about partial restraint, how it's dealt in certain cases, what is exclusive dealing agreements, why during in certain kind of. So was very a broad understanding I've given it to you. There's certain covenants, certain clauses are always entered to restrain something. It is up to the court. Whatever we are discussing is that it's based upon how the drafting of the contract will be done. We are dealing with the general principles of the law. The most important part will be about when your later stages of law school, or when you will enter into the profession, or like law firms you will go into, they draft the contracts. They need to keep in mind that all the clauses, no of the clause should be held void by the court, because if in any kind of dispute happens, the parties will go to court. The clauses should be very clear, the clauses should be precise, and it should not be restraining any kind of trade. It should be reasonable. The reasonability is a doctrine which is very important in the contracts. I've referred to this doctrine multiple times. I think that's all for the today. I would suggest you to read all of these cases. Please do read on these cases. Tell me more about as to if you like the video. Please do like the video, subscribe the video. Tell me in the comment section which case law among these you found to be most relevant. What are your doubts? You can uh, give it to me in your in the comment section, and post your queries. I would be more happy. I would be really happy to answer your questions. And please do subscribe the channel. Thank you so much. Happy learning.